reference is because this person, Adam Kripal of Southern University Law Center, wrote this volume 54 back in 2021. And off the top, just from when I first started reading it, um, it had an overwhelming list of resources that backs up almost just about every single statement that was made in this work. So it leaves really no room to question. And if you do still happen to want to question what's here, the person that Adam Kripal, they're the ones that wrote this. And like I said, with all the references that they provided after every, well, just about every sentence that they provided, you can go look up those references for yourself and clarify for clarification purposes, or if you just want to make sure that the information is right, the references are there. So, but what I like to do is start out with the abstract, and then we'll make our way down. Of course, I'm not going to be able to go through this whole thing right here, right now, tonight. I'm thinking about, depending on how it goes tonight, I'll do a part two to it, and we can finish going over it. Let's start with the abstract. Fair use for education purposes only. No copyright infringement is intended. Abstract. American Indians have the highest poverty rate in the United States, and dire poverty ensnares many reservations. With no private sector and abysmal infrastructure, reservations are frequently likened to third world countries. Present-day Indian poverty is a direct consequence of present-day federal Indian law and policy. 200-year-old laws premised on Indian incompetency remain a part of the U.S. legal system. I'll read that again. 200-year-old laws premised on Indian incompetency, remain a part of the U.S. legal system. If I may pause there for a second before I continue reading, I just want to point out that I've been saying throughout any presentation or any comments that I will make concerning the subject matter, that it has always been via our ignorance that we are being taken advantage of. And until we address that ignorance, we'll continue to suffer. This sentence here speaks to that, and I just want to point that out. Accordingly, Indian country is bound by heaps of federal regulations that apply nowhere else in the United States. The federal regulatory structure impedes tribal economic development. The federal regulatory structure, that means the very regulations that are the structure of the federal government, they impede tribal economic development and prevents tribes from controlling their own resources. Saint Epic saying this. This is federal regulation, that is. This article asserts the federal regulatory quote unquote white tape is unconstitutional. I agree with that statement. By focusing on restraints upon trust land and Indian trader laws, this article demonstrates that contemporary federal regulations impeding tribal economic development are based upon flagrantly racist ideas. This article explores the unique relationship between Indians and the Constitution and concludes that restrictions on tribal trust and Indian trader laws shall be subjected to strict scrutiny rather than the usual rationale basis review applied to legislation relating to Indians. These regulations cannot survive strict scrutiny. Once tribes are liberated from these antiquated regulations, this article proposes that tribes be able to craft their own land use and economic policies without federal approval. And I approve of that message, just so you know. I do. approve of that. Introduction. President Reagan said, quote, "The 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Reference for that quote, Ronald Reagan, the president's news conference, August 12th, 1986. As you can see where it says 1 at the end of the sentence, if you'll go down to the footnotes right up under the paragraph, you'll see the numbers numbered there. Thus far, we're seeing 1 through 4. That first sentence has the number 1, go down to number 1. There's your reference. You can easily look that information up to validate that statement. All right. Nobody knows this better. Moving on, reading on. Nobody knows this better than the Indians. That's 2. Number 2, that reference is Indian is used in this article to denote the indigenous peoples of present day North America. This article uses the term, quote, Indian, end quote, rather than, quote, Native American, end quote, because it is the proper legal term as well as the preferred term of many Indians. See, for example, Mississippi Band of Choctaw Indians, Choctaw at choctaw.org, last visited April 20th, 2021, and various other references there as well that you can see, along with the websites at southernu-nsn.gov, and as you can see, there are other references there under the number 2. Moving on. For thousands of years before European contact, Indians had robust free market economies. That's number 3. Reference number 3 at the bottom under the footnotes. Indians developed a legal system to facilitate commerce, and goods flowed over 1,000 miles from their sites of origin. Thanks to the dynamic economies, Indians were healthy and prosperous. Indians understood economics. Thus, Indians easily incorporated Europeans into their trade works. I'll read that again. Indians understood economics. Thus, Indians easily incorporated Europeans into their trade networks. So there goes the idea that, for the most part, Europeans came over here and took something by force. And that's, I'm just saying that according to what this article is saying, and as a matter of fact, we can go to footnote number 7 and look at the reference to back that claim up. There it is, number 7. Miller, Supernote 3 at 788. After Europeans arrived on this continent, the extensive and well-established tribal trading networks led to the spread of European goods to many tribes long before they met their first white people. Bill Yellowtail, Indian Sovereignty, Perk Reps, Summer 2006, fabricating iron implements at their Portage Forge. They bartered them for the corn and squash that sustained the Corps of Discovery through the bitterly cold winter. A few months and 1,000 miles later, Lewis was astonished to arrive in the Nez Perce community and found that one of these trade axes had preceded him. So there we have the reference to back up that claim. So we can move on to the next paragraph. Oh, let me go. I didn't finish that last one on this page. Let me go back up and skipping it. Yeah, there we go. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Soon after the nation's inception, that is the United States implemented a series of laws governing Indian tribe. Go to number 8 under your footnotes to reference the resources to back that claim up. The laws were supposedly designed to protect Indians from unscrupulous dealings with non-Indians because Indians were deemed incompetent. I will read that again. The laws were supposedly designed to protect Indians from unscrupulous dealings with non-Indians because Indians were deemed incompetent. Let's look at number 9. I want to look at that reference because some people are like, man, he's just making a wild claim and this, that, and the third. But I don't, he's making that claim because of this reference. So let's look at that. It's a Scent-Mock Company versus Arizona Tax Commission. That was from 1980. In 1790, Congress passed a statute regulating the licensing of Indian traders. Act of July 22nd, 1790, also is a reference. Ever since that time, the federal government has comprehensively regulated trade with Indians to prevent fraud and imposition upon them, allegedly. The purpose of the section clearly is to protect the inexperienced, dependent, and improvident Indians from the avarice and cunning of unscrupulous men in official position, and at the same time to prevent officials from being tempted, as they otherwise might be, to speculate on that inexperience or upon the necessities and weakness of these quote-unquote wards of the nation. I've always said that Indians, quote-unquote Indians, are indeed wards of the United States government. In 1823, the U.S. Supreme Court decided that the United States owned the Indian lands, if I'm not mistaken, the Indians' land, and the Indians merely occupied it. The Supreme Court later built upon this principle, and if I'm not mistaken, I think I know their case law, but we'll look at it. Let's go to number 10. There it is. Johnson versus McIntosh. That's the one I was thinking about, but I didn't want to misquote. Johnson versus McIntosh shows that it has never been doubted. And I think I've read this before. I've gone over this case law before on someone's panel before, but I just can't remember at this time. But I believe it was Smoke Signal. But I'll reread it here. It has never been doubted that neither the United States or the several states had a clear title to all lands within the boundary lines described in the treaty, subject only to the Indian right of occupancy, and that the exclusive power to extinguish that right was vested in that government which might constitutionally exercise it. Let's go back up. The Supreme Court later built upon this principle to classify tribes as domestic dependent nations. I've gone over this before as well, I believe on Smoke Signal's channel. But again, the Supreme Court later built upon this principle, the principle that they basically took Indians' land and that Indians merely occupied that principle. The Supreme Court later built on that principle to classify tribes as domestic dependent nations rather than full sovereigns, and named the United States guardian of the Indian wards. Let's look at that reference. I'm quite sure I've referenced this before in case law as well, but let's look at 11. Yes, I have. Cherokee Nation versus Georgia. I've referenced that so many times. If you will, you can go on my page and see the screenshots on it, or you can simply go to, I always reference Google Scholar. You can go to Google Scholar and you can type in Cherokee Nation versus Georgia. And you can go over that case law and you will see it for yourself, that this is very true, that the so-called, quote, Indians, if you will, the Indian tribes, they're all classified as domestic dependent nations. And they are indeed guardians. Well, I'm sorry, not guardians. They are indeed wards of the United States government. Moving on. Indians lost their freedom. Though the Indian wars have ended and Indians now have full rights of citizenship. Of citizenship. Indians now have full rights of citizenship, not sovereignty, not autonomy. You see what I'm saying? Not those guarantees that are protected in the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights. Not that. They're talking about citizenship, which is ultimately membership. And those quote unquote rights, if you will, are but the privileges and immunities within said jurisdiction. Moving on. Though the Indian Wars have ended and Indians now have full rights of citizenship, tribes remain shackled by an antiquated legal system designed to subjugate them. I will read that part again. Tribes remain shackled by an antiquated legal system designed to subjugate them. The great Indian law scholar Felix Cohen found that Indians were subject to over 2,200 more regulations than other American citizens. Consequently, every transaction involving Indians on a reservation requires federal approval. Federal approval. As a result of these rules, it takes 49 steps to engage in energy production on a reservation. Specifically, this is speaking to Indians exercising this on a reservation, while the same energy production takes 4 steps off the reservation. The result is that a business can begin producing oil in about 3 months off a reservation, yet tribes have to wait nearly 3 years to drill for oil on their land. Likewise, an act as simple as executing a mortgage on the reservation requires the approval of the Secretary of Interior. As one federal court put it, the federal government's attitude towards the Indians, quote, can only be characterized as bureaucratic imperialism, end quote. Let me scroll down a little bit. Indian countries, and the reason it's called Indian country, here's the reference to that. What, number 18. Go to Title 18 of the United States Code, Section 1151. There you will find Indian country. Indian countries, nonsensically complex regulatory framework was not born of indigenous ingenuity. Rather, Indian countries, Byzantine legal landscape is a consequence of centuries-old colonial ideology. That is, the red tape is not red at all. It's white. Indeed, let me scroll down to the next one. Indeed, the trust land system was predicated upon Indian imbecility, and its goal was to transfer Indian lands to whites. This is why, let me pause there. This is why I've always said, when you're within the jurisdiction of the United States, any position that you take subordinate to that, you are a ward to them and you are beneath. There is no standing, if you will, higher when as it pertains to the United States government and you taking the position as a subject thereof. So when you take that position, legally, for one, you're incompetent as the people of the land. If you take that position, you're legally and incompetent. And these people are mandated from that point forward. This mandates them to stay in power and continuously exercise the disadvantages we still suffer today. Okay? You are classified as an imbecile and incompetent at law. Why? because the whole system is predicated upon it. The whole system is designed to take your land from you, label you incompetent, and as a ward of the state, so these people can continue being mandated to govern your mines and your estates. Why? Let's say you do become competent, right? But you're still walking around carrying those terms. You're still walking around identifying yourself with these terms within said jurisdiction. And you predicate your very identity upon these legal terms that leave you incompetent in law. When you when you take when you take that position, you must comprehend that fully, because if not, you will just get rolled over as if you're not there, which is, I'm quite sure most of us have had this experience, especially in those courtrooms. We have these feelings today, even out in public, in society, like we've been cut off, like our word means nothing, like what we say means nothing. And it goes back, and shout out to my brother Wale. It goes back to the reputation that we have created and developed over time to not tell the truth. Our lack of speaking the truth has created this notion, if you will. It has created this image that we are without integrity and that we're incompetent and we should be ashamed of ourselves. And this, that, you know how far people go with that. So I think it's just time that we take notice to these things competently. Competently. That is the key. That is key. And this, those in power seek to use this system to continue that. I think that's what the big fight is politically. You know what I'm saying? Even today, what's going on politically, I think you have the people who have faith in what the laws were set in place to actually do, and that's protect and preserve. You see what I'm saying? But what it seems like from the so-called people who are in power today or in those seats today, they're misusing and abusing that power, misinterpreting the law and using it to their advantage when they find loopholes to disadvantage people, only for them to steal and take their property via ignorance. Because being that ignorance of the law is no excuse, you being ignorant does not relieve them. You being ignorant relieves them of the karmic debt, if you will. Let me explain. If their intention is to use the system to disadvantage you, and they're successful at doing so because of your ignorance, that means you took on that lie because of you were ignorant of the truth. The ramifications of that lie or lies being exercised does not negate the truth. It does not negate you suffering the ramifications of it. It's just like saying, well, I didn't know it was fire when I touched it, but it does not matter that you don't know it will burn you. Touch fire and it will happen, regardless if you know it will or not. That's the point I'm making. Regardless if you know you will get burned by this system when it is being used by those who seek to use it fraudulently and defraud you of your property, of your rights, etc. It does not take away from the fact that the ramifications are being suffered from because of that lack of truth. So what is the remedy? What is the remedy to ignorance? Well, let's look at the definition of ignorance. The definition of ignorance is simply a lack of knowledge. Biblically speaking as well, my people perish from a lack of knowledge. So what's the answer? What's the key to all this? Knowledge. The right knowledge. And once you continuously study that right knowledge, you then in turn develop the wisdom and courage, mind you, to exercise what you know. And when you do so competently, you will receive a favorable reply. All right. Without getting too far off, let's get back to this. I want to get back on this subject with the white tape and Indian wards. Where did we leave off at? Okay, nonetheless, the trust land remains Indian country's dominant land tenure system, unfortunately. Indian trader laws are even blunter in their racial categories of, quote, white persons and, quote, full-blooded Indians, end quote. Yet Indian trader laws remain part of the U.S. Code. Though the United States has disavowed racist ideology, laws rooted in Indian inferiority are the dinosaur that won't die. The Constitution does not apply to Indian tribes. Uh-oh, uh-oh. The Constitution does not apply to Indian tribes. What is that? Number 24. Let's go look at the reference. Let's look at the reference. Santa Clara Pueblo versus Martinez, 1978. Let's go to Google Scholar, type that in. Santa Clara Pueblo versus Martinez, 1978. 436 U.S. 4956. Quote, as separate sovereigns pre-existing the constitutions, tribes have historically been regarded as constrained by those constitutional provisions framed specifically as limitations on federal or state authority, which means Indian tribes are only limited to the federal or state authority. This is why I've always said Indian tribes don't even have political power. It rests with the federal or state authority. Don't argue with me. There's the reference. Respectfully. The Constitution does not apply to Indian tribes, but Congress is bound by the Constitution and constrained by the Fifth Amendment when legislating in Indian affairs. The Fifth Amendment prohibits the United States from enacting arbitrary laws or laws that discriminate based upon race without compelling rationale. The trust land restrictions and Indian trader laws are overtly racist by design. Moreover, both laws are irrational and further no legitimate government purpose in their current form. See reference number 27. Accordingly, the constitutionality of the unjust trust land and trader regulations, which do nothing but trap Indians in poverty, should be challenged. The law should be struck down by obsolete impediments to tribal self-government and economic development. So far, what I'm getting out of this, because mind you, I've read most of this already, but so far what I'm getting out of this is that though there are laws there to protect and preserve Indian occupancy, according to the United States Code, there are also rules, regulations, and codes in place that serve seemingly, and I'll use my words carefully, seemingly to be a loophole to use only by the United States government or any federal or state authority to exercise at any time. Because ultimately, within said jurisdiction, again, there is no power greater within said jurisdiction except for that government. So if one is claiming to be, quote, claiming to be an, quote, Indian, end quote, then one has according to the United States government, according to the United States government, one has taken the position of a ward and is in a political inferior position. They have taken an inferior political position when they identify as such, just like Black, colored, African American, Indian. All of these terms have their place and definition within the United States government. So as it pertains to the United States government, if you identify as any of those terms, you are subject to all rules, regulations, legislation, all of it. And this is where the work needs to be done in order for us to fix this. We can't keep overlooking this information that may not be so much in our favor as it pertains to our identity. We must accept that. We must accept that. I'm one to study, and I'm one to study well. My thing is case law. So when I come across articles like this that coincides with the principles that I found in the case law, yes, I'm going to reference it. And yes, unfortunately, it may go against some people's ideologies or what they may think concerning this subject matter. But again, before I share my own thoughts and my own personal position with it, I'm going to give you the references that I've studied, and we'll go over those things to prove it based on references and quote unquote or so-called resources, you see what I'm saying, that are provided on the record today. I like to use highly accredited articles from highly accredited schools and universities and or most of all governments. You know what I'm saying? Things from government websites, courthouses, things that you can use in a court of law in your defense. I like to reference those. And that's what I'm sharing with you. Am I saying you can use this particular article in a court case? No, I'm saying the information that you find in this article, you can use it to whatever your circumstance or situation entails, but it's going to take study. It's going to take work. You're not going to find it all in one paragraph or one sentence and you think you got it all. You have to continue to study further to grasp and comprehend the principle before you enforce it. This is key to comprehension and understanding, the development of wisdom. And you must do so in truth, love, and honor. Outside of these principles, you will continue to fail. All right? I know from experience. And as I continue to move on this YouTube journey with me sharing this information with you, there will be times, in episodes where I will share my, personal experiences and show the information and proof of the things that I've gone through in the legal system when I deem necessary. All right. So, but as of right now, we're going to stick to the information and the reference that people can take home with themselves, study it, and use it to whatever advantage that they deem necessary. All right. With that, let's move on. Let's go to the next one. I think I'm gonna go over one more page and I'll yield it from here and drop the link for anybody who may want to come up and let's talk about the information that has been presented first and foremost. Let's talk about that first. Let's get to the nitty-gritty of that. So if you have anything to say about the information that was presented thus far, let's intelligently, converse about it. You know what I'm saying? And let's build on that. And then we can get into other things that may be connected to this, but far, tentacles that connect everything. But before we go too far off into the other ones, let's kind of stick to the meat of it first. All right. All right, moving on. Once the unconstitutional white tape is peeled from Indian country, tribes must be empowered to self-govern. In 1970, President Nixon sought to grant tribal governments greater control over their economic and political destinies because even well meaning federal programs, quote, have frequently proved to be ineffective and demeaning, end quote. Those are the words of President Nixon in 1970. Reference number 28 below in the footnotes. All right, I'll read that one more time. In 1970, President Nixon sought to grant tribal governments greater control over their economic and political destinies because even well-meaning federal programs, quote, have frequently proved to be ineffective and demeaning, end quote. Congress adopted a policy of tribal self-determination in 1975. Every president and Congress since has embraced tribal self-determination. I'll read that again. Every president and Congress since has embraced tribal self-determination. 13 years after President Nixon announced tribal self-determination as the United States Indian policy, however, President Reagan stated, since 1975, there has been more rhetoric than action. Instead of fostering and encouraging self-government, federal policies have by and large inhibited the political and economic development of the tribes. Excessive regulation and self-perpetuating bureaucracy have stifled local decision-making, thwarted Indian control of Indian resources, and promoted dependency rather than self-sufficiency. Reference number 31 as to those words from President Reagan. President Reagan expressed a desire to remove impediments to tribal self-government and economic development. Let me read that again. My apologies, I misread. President Reagan expressed a desire to remove impediments to tribal self-government and economic development. If I said that before and thought I might have misspoke, my apologies. But nevertheless, the year 2021 has come, and President Reagan's remarks are just as relevant. Tribal self-determination and Orwellian federal oversight are entirely at odds. Federal Indian law and its nearly 2-century-long interdiction of tribes is the greatest inhibitor of self-determination and economic development. Without the legal capacity to control their land and resources, tribes cannot choose their own paths. Self-determination cannot occur while tribes remain laden with the yoke of wardenship. I will read that again. And reference number 34 in the footnotes. Self-determination cannot occur while tribes remain laden with the yoke of wardship. As long as federal Indian law remains underpinned by archaic assumptions about the United States indigenous peoples, and that might makes right, Indians will remain a conquered people living under an immiserating colonial regime. See reference 35 in the footnotes. This article asserts that, give me a second. This article asserts that displacing in antiquated federal rules with tribal law is the key to tribal economic development. Tribal ownership and sovereignty over tribal land must be recognized in lieu of the current tribal trust land system. Similarly, tribes must be free to enact and apply their own economic regulations to all persons within their territory. Controlling land and the people within it is the essence of sovereignty. which is why I don't like sovereignty. For one, it is a granted authority, and it grants you control over the land and control over the people. That's dictatorship. That's why I don't like sovereignty, because sovereignty calls for a king or dictator, if you will. That's not American. That's not American tradition. It's not American custom, nor is it American law. Yes, Epic Study said that. Quote me too. Controlling land and the people within it is the essence of sovereignty. And the United States signed hundreds of treaties affirming tribes' right to exist as sovereigns. As Justice Neil Gorsuch recently wrote, honoring tribal treaty rights, quote, is the least we can do, end quote. Making tribal law the preeminent authority in Indian country furthers the U.S. policy of tribal self-determination and will ignite long dormant tribal economies. The rest of the paper proceeds as follows. Part 1 provides data on Indian poverty and natural resources. Part 2 discusses the trust land and Indian trader framework. Part 3 examines how the Constitution applies to Indians. And Part 4 argues that the trust land and Indian trader scheme is unconstitutional. Part 5 explores tribal governance once Indian trader laws and trust land restrictions are removed. And I will end it right there, depending on responses to this and interaction as well. I will pick up at another time to go over the next part of this. But I did drop the link in the chat for this article. You are free to go over it in your spare time, read it, comprehend it, and if you have any smoke about it, or if you have anything to build on it as far as what I presented so far, I'll get ready to drop the link now, and we can talk about it now. Give me 1 second here. And put this in the chat for anybody who would like to come up. I see you, Milestone. Shout out to you, brother. All right. The link is in the chat. I'll leave this article up in case anybody wanted to discuss what we've went over thus far. You may need this up on the screen as a reference. I'll leave it up for you. But there's the link in the chat. And salute Dre Cobbs. Salute to you, my brother. Thank you for joining me, man. Looks like you kind of joined a little late, or maybe you just saying something in the chat a little late. But I just finished up this first part of the presentation. But the link is in the chat. Anybody that want to come up, we can all discuss it, man. We can all get on this, man. And I'd love to hear what you guys' thoughts are about it. So until then, I'll mute up and I'll play a track right quick until we get some people to come up. If not, I'll end the live stream. And until next time, salute to everybody in the chat. Again, the link is in the chat for anybody who wishes to join.
I run this place and I've begun this race. Must I rerun this pace? I'm the reason it's become this way, and their love for it is the reason I have become this praise. They love my darkness, I've made them heartless, and in return they have become my martyrs. I've been in the poem of many a poet, and I reside in the art of many a artist. Some of your smartest have tried to articulate my whole partnerness, but they're fruitless in their harvest. The trail grows from my footsteps. I'm the one that they follow. I am the one that they march with. Through the back alleys and the black markets, the Oval Offices, the crack houses and apartments. Through the mazes of the queens, the pages of the sages, and the chambers of the kings. Through the veins of the fiends, a paper chases pages, yo, I'm famous on the scene. One of the oldest, most ancientest things. Speak every single language on the planet, yeah, I mean. I am the American dream, the rape of Africa, the undying machine, the overpriced medicine, the murderous regime, the tough guys front and the one behind the scene. I am the blood of this city. It's gas, water, and electricity. I'm its gem and its math and its history. The gunshots in the class, and you can't pass if you missing G. I taught them better than that. I taught them aim for the head and hope they never come back. I'm glad your daddy's gone, baby. Hope he never comes back. I hope he's with your mother, with my hustlers high in my trap. I hope you die in this trash. I can't help it. All I hear when you crying is laughs. I'm sure somebody find you tied in this bag behind the hospital, little baby crack addicts had. Then maybe you can grow up and be a stripper, a welfare receiving prostitute and gold digger. You can watch on TV how they should properly depict you. The river shall flow with liquors, quench your thirst on my elixirs. I am the safe haven for the rebel, runaway and the resistor, the trusted misleader, the #1 defender. And from a throne of their bones I rule. These fools are my fuel, so I make them cool. Baptize them in the water out of Scarface pool, and feed them from the table that held the Corleone's food. If you die, tell them that you played my game. I hope your bullet holes become mouths that say my name, cause I'm the...
All that money's good for nothing if it's scared. Sing it, yeah, yeah. Look, I am no fashion model, but I got fresh for photographers. The camel coat had the collar up, cause my emotions was bottled up. And though the ocean did not erupt, it turned up till it's loud enough to just make something out of us. Past the shadow of a doubt in us, golly, geometry and calculus, that I can move any mountain with. A nigga gotta be an alchemist, trying to create another avenue of revenue, inseparable because I'm in love with having you. Security is just a whole nother animal. I can't assume Xanadu had a panic room. I wish the man in the moon had a manual, and gratitude for the wishes I granted you. A lifetime, finally I'm understanding you. The lifelines at the lines in a hand or two, and how it's difficult to undo the damage you've done once the codes run under the scanner too. So if you capture the flame and it's painful, you just charge that to the game, cause it's shameful to just fall back and complain that you fractured the laws of attraction again. Focus on a more passionate plane. No conceptions immaculate, man. Once again to the well I went, while the soul man screamed bloody hell I've been. I'm trying to decode the meaning of the spell I'm in, and I don't even know what fucking hotel I'm in. I checked in as the monarch of melanin, the L I fit, my body is a shell I'm in. Piece of myself together, teaching myself to never let one loss divorce my development. Reminds me of ego tripping like Nikki Giovanni. Wishing the system might deliver me a body, come loudy. The rug on the floor was from Saudi. The message I hung on the door was unrowdy, no dowry. The price of it all was one cowrie. Now we the last flop house on grappling with fantasies, feel a bracket in. And if you capture the flame and it's painful, then just charge that to the game. Cause it's shameful to just fall back and complain that you fracture the laws of attraction. Again, focus on a more passionate plane. Estimate a more accurate frame of time, a frame of mind attached to the same. No conception's immaculate, man. Where I go from here? Oh, I know I could be nowhere. And trust it, all that money's good for nothing if you're scared. Sing it, yeah, yeah. Where I go from here? Oh, I know I could be nowhere. And trust it, all that money's good for nothing if you're scared. Sing it, yeah, yeah.
All right. Brother Wale, I don't understand why, because I just tried on another device, and on my end is that link is loading. Where it's loading with no problem. I don't understand why it wouldn't load for you on that end, but on your end. But again, like I said in the chat, just try copying the link and pasting it in your browser. Just try doing it like that instead of just clicking on it. You can try that. If not, then you probably just have to try it the long way. The long way is like typing it in word, letter for letter, StreamYard.com / the link right there, all the letters behind it, and a couple of numbers. So I mean, other than that, I don't understand why the link wouldn't work, why it's not working for you. But I'll give you a few, I guess another minute or so to see if you can try to get it, because I think you were trying to come up. But if not, I'll go ahead and end the live stream. I just wanted to bring this information to the forefront. There's also, as a matter of fact, give me 1 second, y'all. I'm gonna go to my page and I'm gonna pull up a case law that I've shared on Smoke Signals channel before as well, and this will help bring even more clarity to what I just brought forward to you all now. So give me a second and I'll pull this up right quick. All right, here we go, community. Because even, you know what, let me do this too. Yeah, let me share this one, this tab right here. I think people, yeah. Everybody can see that. I shared this before on Brother Smoke Signals channel. The legal status of American Indians and Alaska Native tribes are, again, as we just read in that article, they are, quote, domestic dependent nations, according to the United States government within its jurisdiction. We went to this website that night when I was on his page. But as you can see here, here's a screenshot of it. You see that right there? This ain't epic. This is the United States government. All right. Under the frequently asked questions on their website of the Office of Tribal Justice, U.S. Department of Justice, frequently asked questions about Native Americans. Let me see if that comes up the way I need it to. All right, looks like it did. Hold on. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. All right, let's see. Let's see if it'll open on. Oh, no. It's just, okay. All right. What is the legal status of American Indians and Alaska Native tribes? Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution of the United States vests the Congress with the authority to engage in relations with the tribes. When the governmental authority of tribes was first challenged in the 1830s, Chief Justice John Marshall articulated a fundamental principle that has guided the evolution of federal Indian law. Tribes retain certain inherent powers of self-government as, quote, domestic dependent nations. All right. So not only do you have that article to reference, but you also have, okay, those are the comments. You also have this from the United States government as well. You also have this from the United States government. Let's pull this back up. I hope it didn't go back. All right. There's between legal and lawful. Hold on. I don't want to do these. I want to go back to, hold on, give me a second. Colored, Negro. Yeah, that's when I exercise. Non-tax obligatory status, which is nothing for me. I do that shit on a day-to-day basis, man. Okay, we know who that is. I know that is. Come on, load up for me. SG sales and use. Okay. Martin versus, let's see. Racial Integrity Act. Let's see. Okay, right of occupancy granted. There we go. Okay, here's one. Here's a good reference. Was the one I was looking for, but it's fine. This will work too. It speaks to that art. Oh, my bad. It speaks to that article that we just got finished going over. Matter of fact, let me see if I can. Yeah, there we go. The reference here is case law, United States ex rel versus United States ex rel Chunny versus Ringrose. All right. And we're going to go over this right quick. Let's look at what I've captioned. Quote, Indians were permitted to occupy. Indians were permitted, which means they were given permission to occupy territory over which they had exercised sovereignty. Quote, right of occupancy granted by the conquering sovereign. The conquering sovereign. This is where your sovereignty comes from. It comes from one who has conquered you and granted you such. And where does the United States get its sovereignty? The crown. Also have case law to back that up as well. So if anybody would like, references on that, it's found under my community wall here as well. But let's go over this. United States ex rel Chunny versus Ringrose. Indians' Aboriginal title derives from their presence on the land before the arrival of white settlers. That's Tahitian Indians versus United States. You can go look up that reference. I've gone over that before, but let's continue. After conquest by European powers, Indians were permitted to occupy territory over which they had previously exercised sovereignty. This right is not an ownership right. This right is not an ownership right, but is rather a right of occupancy granted by the conquering sovereign. Referred to as, quote, original Indian title, end quote, aboriginal Indian title, end quote, or simply, quote, Indian title, end quote. Felix S. Cohen's Handbook of Federal Indian Law, 487, 1982. All right. The right is therefore necessarily a creature of the conquering sovereign's law. The right of occupancy, that is, the right of occupancy, is therefore necessarily a creature of the conquering sovereign's law. Because the parties have offered no evidence. Give me 1 second. Yeah, because the parties have offered no evidence or argument that the Spanish or Mexican law of aboriginal title differs from our own, we will assume that it does not. Aboriginal title entitles the tribes to full use and enjoyment of the surface and mineral estate and to resources such as timber on the land. Despite this right of occupancy, the conquering government acquires the exclusive right to extinguish Indian title. That's Johnson versus McIntosh. I will read that again. Despite this right of occupancy, the conquering government, that is the United States government, acquires the exclusive right to extinguish Indian title. And they acquired that exclusive right through Congress by the Crown. I have case law to back that up as well. But I want to point this out. We need to take notice to these things because these things are for the record. This is a stare decisis case law, which means this particular case law and any other case laws referencing to it can be used as a defense to stand on as truth. Let's keep going. Yeah, and I also have case laws from these various Moorish Americans as well. This one is People versus Johnson Hill, but we're not here for that. We'll go over that one day. I also have case laws concerning land patents and lodial titles and all of that too as well. But let's keep this going because I want to get to specifically. Yes, all titles are colorable, involve interest. What is this? Okay. District Court, Indiana, a clear indication that you are not the owner. Okay, that's a lodial title. That's more on the lodial title. And then, okay. Where's that? Yeah, for some reason I was on the land titles. I think that's when people was. I think this is me posting this stuff was in response to all those people running around making videos talking about allodial titles and how. But when they read their allodial titles that they claim that they have ownership and all of that, when they get to reading those allodial titles, it has terms in it like granted, and you know what I'm saying, sovereignty and stuff like that, granted authority to, you know, control, and it has that type of terminology in there. But we all know that type of power comes from a conquering and ruling sovereign who granted you such an authority. So as it pertains to you being the be all under those documents, it's not. Those documents were issued via the United States government. And they're not titles of ownership. You don't own it. Because if you did, you would be presenting information or title. Let's just, for lack of a better word, we'll use the word title. You will use a title you yourself, you and your people created. You see what I'm saying? To speak to that truth. But when we consistently and constantly rely on specifically U.S. documentation and this, that, and the third to determine whether we rule or own some shit, That clearly shows our incompetency to handle our own affairs. That clearly shows that. But not to get off topic, my bad. I was looking for this specifically concerning. Well, we can read this right quick. The term Indian, as it pertains to the Wheeler-Howard Act, Section 19. It reads, the term Indian, as used in this act, shall include persons of Indian descent who are, listen to this closely, who are members of any recognized Indian tribe now under federal jurisdiction, and all persons who are descendants of such members who were on June 1st, 1934, residing within the present boundaries of any Indian reservation, and shall further include all other persons of one half or more Indian blood. So when they say, well, let me keep reading the rest of this. For the purpose of this act, Eskimos and other Aboriginal peoples of Alaska shall be considered Indians. Wow. Wow. Did you just hear that? Did you read that? The term, quote, tribe, end quote, whenever used in this act shall be construed to refer to any Indian tribe, organized band, pueblo, or the Indians residing on one reservation. The words adult Indians were used in this act shall be construed to refer to Indians who have attained the age of 21 years. So I just want to point that out. Now, where's that? Okay. Okay, this IRS. Social security numbers. Where is that? Okay, I think this is it. No, that's artificial persons. I'm close. I know it's somewhere right after this. Okay. Okay, that's the Paris Treaty. Okay, the Emancipation Proclamation. And mind you, again, and shout out to Copper Empress Holbert too, and the Lost Confederacy, who also pointed this out, that the Emancipation Proclamation, as I have captioned here, does not mention any specific group or ethnicity of, quote, persons as slaves. The document reads, quote, all persons held as slaves, end quote. All slaves apparently weren't of African or Negro descent. To say definitively that this document specifically freed so-called African American slaves is not a safe assumption. As a matter of fact, this document does not mention any, quote, Negro, quote, colored, quote, black, or any African American or white persons either held as a slave or being freed from slavery specifically. Upon further examination, you will find this document was not exclusive to or exclusively for so-called black people, and it wasn't. And here it is right here. I have the actual book with the whole Emancipation Proclamation word for word in it, as including the preface by Abraham Lincoln as well. So, I mean, and it does not specifically say anything about Negroes, colors, blacks, African Americans, white people, none of these labels that are applied to people today. This proclamation does not list any of those. It talks about none of those. But it does talk about, quote, all persons held as slaves, which means they left that open to interpretation. All right? They did. It was left open to interpretation as far as the identity of slaves. That was left open to interpretation. So in other words, that proclamation basically says whoever these people may be presumed to be slaves, those are the people they're apparently talking to, regardless of nationality. So yes, it could have. And from my personal perspective, when I studied the history, I think this proclamation was mainly for white people. That's just me. That's another build. We'll get to that. But let's get to what I came for. Ooh, there's another one. Lysander Spooner. I need to look him up. Where is that? Yeah, there it is. Jim Crow in the USA, legal history of blood quantum. Hey, if you guys have time to, go look up this information, The Legal History of Blood Quantum in Federal Indian Law in 1935 by Paul Spruhan. All right, go look that up and read that. Study well and research, man. American Indian Culture and Research Journal, another good journal. I like that journal. Let's go. Where you at? I mentioned this on Smoke Signals channel as well. I mentioned the fact that, give me 1 second. Okay. I mentioned the fact that, as captioned here, Aboriginal title or the theory thereof, also known as Indian title or original title, traces back to the 16th century Spanish theologian by the name of Francisco de Vitoria, who's also known as the father of modern international law. You don't have to believe me, just go pull it up, go study it. You'll see for yourself. It's well documented. All right, let's find this part. Man, I had so much before Indian title, the claim thereof. I didn't know it. Let's see. Nature and humanity. Okay. The Dawes Act, I have the full Dawes Act. I have it right here as well, of 1887. It's right there. The whole act is right there. You can go read it for yourself as well. Dred Scott. Yeah, let's hit this right quick. Let's hit Dred Scott right quick. Well, you know what? No, not yet. Hold on. I'm gonna do a separate build on that. But I have the full case here outlined, including Robert Taney's judicial opinion when it comes to that case, all right here. And I posted it, I know, almost 2 years ago. It says over a year ago, but when I go back into looking at the time before, it's been almost 2 years since I posted that. Let me see. What is your claim? Okay. Part 1, massacre of Cheney Indians. Chief Powhatan. Here you go. Y'all go look Chief Powhatan, who ruled over the Algonquin tribes in Virginia when Jamestown was settled. Go look it up. Or you can read this here if you want. Iroquois Confederation, the same Iroquois who sided with the British too. I'll get into that too. All right. Remember how I used to, how I would be on various panels, or mainly specifically Smoke Signal channel. I would make the claim that it is, I've made that claim here today as well, that the Crown exercises full power and control here via Congress. And they do, because it is their charters that are active here. The charters that started the Virginia Company, any of the colonies, they're all charters that were granted by the King of England. And the King grants charters to companies, quote, from this case law. Soon after, I'm reading the highlighted portion, soon after Great Britain determined on planting colonies in America, the King granted charters to companies of his subjects who is associated for the purpose of carrying the views of the Crown into effect and of enriching themselves. The first of these charters was made before possession was taken of any part of the country. There's your root. And as I have outlined and captioned in this page, read the entire page. If you choose to not go look up the case law, Worcester versus Georgia, Supreme Court, 1832. If you don't want to go look it up, here is the screenshot of that whole page. You can click on it and read it for yourself and get the facts as they are for the record. Excuse me. And the name of that book is called History of the United States in Documents. Just so you know. It's expatriation, augmentation. All right. Oh, what's that? The Emancipation Proclamation. Okay. Anybody familiar with this here? The first White House of the Confederacy? This was the White House. The White House, yes, used to be in Alabama. It sure did. And this is an actual picture that I took. My wife and I drove past this place. And I saw the sign out there. I took a picture of it, did some research, and it is what it is. It's a lot of history we missing. Okay, I think this is it. Oh yeah. I stated earlier that the Iroquois sided with the British. Here's the case law to back it up. I'm just saying. Although most of the Iroquois sided with the British, the Oneidas actively supported the colonists in the Revolution. This assistance prevented the Iroquois from asserting a united effort against the colonists. I will read that again. Yeah, bomb drop. I will read that again. Although most of the Iroquois sided with the British, the Oneidas Indians, Oneidas, actively supported the colonists in the Revolution. This assistance prevented the Iroquois from asserting a united effort against the colonists. So it seems like the Indians were their own worst enemies. And thus the Oneidas' support was of considerable aid. After the war, the United States recognized the importance of the Oneidas' role. And in the Treaty of Fort Stanton, the national government promised the Oneidas would be secure, quote, in the possession of the lands on which they were settled, end quote. Within a short period of time, the United States twice reaffirmed this promise in the treaties of Fort Hamar and Canandaigua. Looks like Canada to me, but there you go. I didn't forget about that case law. No purchase. In 1793, Congress granted a stronger, more detailed version of the act, providing that, quote, no purchase or grant of lands or any title or claim thereto from any Indians or nation or tribe of Indians within the bounds of the United States. The key phrase here is within the bounds of the United States, because that's where their power is, within its jurisdiction, okay, shall be of any validity in law or equity, unless the same be made by a treaty or convention entered into pursuant to the Constitution. Last highlighted portion. Despite Congress' clear policy that no person or entity should purchase Indian land without the acquiescence of the federal government. I'll leave that right there. I think that speaks for itself. I don't think I need to expound any further on that. I want to go over this too. And I believe this is concerning the Cherokee Nation versus the United States when they were looking for sovereignty. They wish to be granted sovereignty. But as I have captioned up here, you lie in bed with dogs, you get up with fleas. That's what my mama always told me. These two quotes reign supreme in my mind, boy. These two quotes. My mama always told me, if you lie in bed with dogs, you get up with fleas. And two, if you that was that second one. If you lie in bed with dogs, you get up with fleas. You hang around trash, it'll get in your eye. In this case, law speaks just to it. I swear it does. I'll read the highlighted portion. By treaties and statutes of the United States, the right of the Cherokee Nation to exist as an autonomous body, subject always to the paramount authority of the United States, has been recognized. Let me read that again. Don't just hear what y'all wanted to hear with that, because I know there's a part I just said that went over most people's heads who may hear it. And that part where it says, subject always to the paramount authority of the United States. Let's not overlook that. That means the Cherokee Nation's autonomous body is predicated upon that authority of the United States. Without it, without that recognition or acquiescence, if you will, of the United States government to allow them to be so, they cannot be that within said jurisdiction. Do you comprehend that? All right. United States authority. And here's another example of the United States operating authority of the Crown, and the Crown exercising that authority through Congress via doctrine of discovery. All right. I'll read the highlighted portion. It also made clear the fact that Congress should extinguish such aboriginal title without raising any justiciable issue because, quote, the power of Congress in that regard is supreme. Santa Fe Pacific. All right, look that up. Santa Fe Pacific company case law. Look that up. All right, the claim of Indian title. I went over this already, but I'll read it once more. Indian title is a permissive right of occupancy. Now that we have a comprehension of the right of occupancy, you see that right of occupancy is a granted authority, just like, it's synonymous with sovereignty, right? It's granted though, which means without it being recognized by the conquering authority, you see what I'm saying? You don't have sovereignty. You don't have any right of occupancy, any right of anything. And it is extinguishable by the very government that granted you those rights. All right. Indian title is a permissive right of occupancy granted by the federal government to the aboriginal possessors of the land. Oh, okay. I see you, Wale. Let me get you up here. Sorry about that. Let me get you up here. I see you, Wale. Let me finish this up and then you can chime in, my brother. Johnson versus McIntosh. It is, quote, mere possession not specifically recognized as ownership. Tahitian Indians versus United States, and may be extinguished by the federal government at any time. Although an quote, extinguishment cannot be lightly implied in view of the avowed solitude of the federal government for the welfare of its Indians, end quote. United States versus Santa Fe Railroad Company. When the government clearly intends to extinguish Indian title, the courts will not inquire into the means or propriety of the action. Extinguishment of Indian title based on Aboriginal possession is, of course, a different matter. The power of Congress in that regard is supreme. The manner, method, and time of such extinguishment raise political, not justiciable issues. As stated by Chief Justice Marshall in Johnson versus McIntosh, the exclusive right of the United States to extinguish Indian title has never been doubted. And whether it be done by treaty, by the sword, or by purchase, by the exercise of complete dominion adverse to the right of occupancy or otherwise, its justness is not open to inquiry in the courts. All right. And there's one more reference I want to go over right quick. Brother Wale, if you will allow me real quick, and then I will let you have the floor with anything that you may want to present concerning the subject matter. So give me 1 second. The distinction between Indian and freedman. Let me see, where is that? Okay, state of Texas. Within the with the consent of the United States. Okay, I think this is it here. I think this one is it, or it might. Hold on. Okay, yeah, I think that is it. I'll go over this one. If it's not it, that's fine. It's still relevant. All right. I'll read the highlighted portion, and I have it captioned with the consent of the United States. That's key. That is very key. Even construed as including the plural, however, it is urged that the word Indians does not literally include an Indian tribe, and that it is plain from other provisions of the act that Congress intended to distinguish between Indian tribes and individual Indians. But as we see it, this proves too much. This wasn't what I was looking for, but that's fine. At the time of enactment of the predecessors of Section 194, I believe they're talking about Title 25, where an Indian makes a claim, where the burden of proof is on the white person making claim of ownership when an Indian makes a claim of ownership previous to that. That means the burden of proof is on the white man that's making the claim that they own it. They have to prove that they own it and prove that the Indian does not, because the fact that the Indian stepped forward and simply made the claim that they own it. You see what I'm saying? He's not, the Indian doesn't have to prove that position. Message. But anyway, Section 194, Indian land ownership was primarily tribal ownership. Aboriginal title, a possessory right, was recognized and was extinguishable by only by agreement with the tribes with the consent of the United States. Oneida Indian Nation versus County of Oneida. Yeah, Oneida Indians, the sellouts. I said it. The case law proves it. It shows it. But with that, I'll yield for now. And Brother Wale, if you have anything you'd like to add. Brother Wale, if you have anything.
Yeah,
like
I do. But the last thing I do, but your last sentence proclamation was like, threw me off, that the Oneidas were sellouts, because they simply made a determination.
Brother Wale, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me? You can't hear me, huh? I guess.
Let me check. Hold on, let me check.
I see the thing moving, but you don't hear me. I see the little thing brightening up every time I talk.
Okay, brother Wale.
Yeah, it's working. Is it working?
Yeah, I still can't.
I don't know, man.
I can't hear it.
I see the thing, like I said, I see the thing moving as I speak. There you go, my man.
Okay, I Brother Wale, I can hear you on my other device. I just can't hear you on the device where I'm streaming live from. But you're fine. Go ahead. You're fine. You're good. Go ahead. Go ahead.
It sounds like you're coming in slow on it, but it don't matter. I was just saying the statement that last statement you said about the Oneidas being sellouts. I took homage with that, because it seemed to me that the people, the Oneida as it were, determined for themselves to pick a side on an argument that wasn't theirs. It was between the English and the colonialists, and they picked a side based upon their perspective. The other people picked a side too based on their perspective, so they sold out. I mean, who sold out? As long as you pick a side, both of them sold out to me. But besides all of that, the idea that everything that you read, I had heard most of that from my mother. She had instructed me on a lot that you were reading about the position of a ward and how we are wards of the state. I mean, the United States, not the individual states. And a lot of that I was reading. That's why I wanted to get with you. It seems a lot of that is what our people were working with in some cases, was the deal with the United States. And even in the paperwork you got there about the Oneidas, even though they were signed and promised all kind of protections and stuff, they didn't receive those protections from the U.S. government and the state of whatever state that not really supposed to be dealing with them came in and took a lot of their land over through their influences, to the point that the United States had to make a separate law in 1793 to stop that kind of movement of the different other factions taking advantage of the Indians. So, like I said, I don't know to say somebody's a sellout and all that kind of stuff. To me, is like, I don't go with it. But I would ask us to be more lenient toward the people and their decisions and stuff like that, because we've made a lot of decisions that I'm sure we can be argued to be sellouts for those decisions. Even getting a job is a sellout move to some people. That's all. Everything else, man, is beautiful watching your presentation. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, brother Wale. And I appreciate that. Correction on it. And I comprehend. I do. I appreciate you correcting me on it. I shouldn't be so quick to, open my mouth and say, and me for one, I should already know better. You know what I'm saying? Because I am one to know about the hardships and the type of shit that our people, excuse my language, the type of things that our people went through and suffered, and the type of decisions that we had to make, while we were under such harsh occupation. And you know what I mean? And I get that. I shouldn't be so quick to, I should be more apt to understanding and comprehending the situation and understanding how and why did they, those decisions were made. And I didn't mean to come off disingenuous, but if I did, I do sincerely apologize. But I was just bringing the case law for the ones who, constantly making the claims about what they believe it to be or what happened or what have you like that. But what I found in studying all these case laws, it brings back the perspective of what was really going on. You see what I'm saying? It brings back it sheds light on the truth in some matters, and others it exposes the lies as well. You know what I mean? So when you do see certain actions that we're taking legally when it comes to the case law, I was so quick to jump in that direction, because when it comes to enforcing the law, it takes integrity. It takes endurance too, Brother Wale. You know what I'm saying? I can say that for sure, because you talking to a man that sat in jail on principle. I've sat in jail before on principle, which means I didn't take an easy way out just to get out fast. I'm one of those people who stand on principle, and I'm not willing to compromise for not even to save my life, Brother Wale. And I think this is what even the Bible speaks to as it pertains to one enduring until the end. Are you able to stand on the truth, unwavering, even if it costs you your life? And I find in most of these case laws that I've come across, to people who have capitulated, it's just what it is. That was the case. They didn't take that. For me, capitulating is not an honorable approach. For me, it's not honorable at all.
What is not honorable?
Taking the position of capitulating, giving in, always win. I see you. Give me 1 second. I'm about to add you up. Give me 1 second. See if I can put you. Okay, here we go. I got you always win.
I started a piece of work like that about 10 or 12 years ago.
Great.
I started. Oh, one love, my man.
One love, brother.
I started a piece of work like that on integrity. I actually got myself arrested based on my attitude, and by getting into that that whole system and stuff physically, I realized a lot of things, and uh, I realized a lot of things that I was very happy to be able to see with my own eyes, and and realize too that some of the people who others might call sellouts or whatever, they're just trying to help the best way they can from their perspective. There was a dude in the jail, he was on that same thing you on, principle. He refused to take a plea deal because he was not guilty. He stayed in there 3 or 4 months. When I got there, he was already on his third month or something like that. My situation only held me for 10 days. When I was about to, the 10 days was up, I was like, screw them, man. I ain't signing nothing. And he told me, he said, hey, man, I've been in here 90 days. I lost my apartment, everything I had, all my stuff, my girlfriend, my children don't talk to me. He said, sign the paper and go home, man. It ain't worth it. I'm in here doing this thing, and I'll hold the fort. But you go home.
And to speak to that point, brother Wale, I kind of went through the same thing. I could tell y'all how it psychologically affected me. So I got my first felony through a situation like that. We walking home, me and my friends. The police try to stop and frisk us. So I'm standing up for our rights. Like, man, y'all ain't got no probable cause to mess with us and this and that. And I'm standing up and breaking, giving them laws, but they still searches and stuff. So they found the gun on one of my homies. Why they put the gun on me though and locked me up for the gun. And told them to walk off and go home. And I'm like, so when I was in jail, it was like I was mentally just beat up from they kept me in there, court case months out, court date months out and stuff. So when I finally go to court, I try to plead my case and let them know what went down. It wasn't no go, so I just pleaded out to go home because I had lost job, everything was messed up. Took my gun card. I had card and all that, but they took all that shit.
That's how I go. That's the setup, though. I mean, it's the regular setup. Like Epic said, he could have signed something too and got out earlier, maybe with that signature. However, he was more inclined to hang in there and fight. Like some people say, he picked his battle, and he was willing to die on that hill.
And in retrospect, brothers told me if I would have fought that, I probably would have beat it, because they didn't even have probable cause, but I wasn't knowledgeable at the time. So I always tell brothers, know the case laws and study that, and be knowledgeable about what you up against, because you can have a chance of beating it, because they be in the wrong, they slip up.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Even though I was knowledgeable, because I knew, I had no experience and I had no, what do you call it? When you have something to look at, I didn't know anyone who had treaded that walk. I was
a reference.
Huh?
Somebody you could reference somebody's situation
there was nobody I could reference, nobody I could talk to, nobody even I could talk to was on that level of defiance, man. I mean, I had no friends. I was out there by myself, and I did not know enough. I learned a lot of stuff after I signed that paper, though. But had I known that stuff before I did that, along with my conviction, because I knew about this is how my mother explained it to me when she was explaining to me all these stuff you were saying about our position as wards of the state, and the state is supposed. That's why they even came up with that welfare stuff. It was part of that thing you were saying where they have to see till we get food and stuff like that. That's part of being a ward of the state, and the people accepted that to a degree because it sounded like it could work, because they were to protect us from the other crackers that were coming in, like the state and the Klan and all that stuff. But they did not right away. I mean, like 20 years later, they just sat back and let them people run like they wanted to run. But it was the plan from the beginning. Like when that's what I was saying about the Oneida. They chose the colonists. The other Iroquois chose the British. It didn't matter to the British or the colonists. Either way, they were going to screw the Indians. Do you see what I'm saying? That was their plan from day one. When they talked to them Indians and said, help us out, we need you and we love you and all. They knew they were lying and was going to stick them in the butt with a stick so that they get a chance.
Right. They were from
the Indians didn't realize that, because they were used to, even in the paper you read earlier about it, when I first came on about an hour ago, you were reading how the Indians were naive to all of that deception and stuff. They didn't know about trick words and con man and stuff. They didn't know. That's why they say they wanted to protect the Indian from the other Europeans coming in, because they know they're bringing in tricks and games, and they're gonna run it on them people, and the people are not ready for them tricks and games. So, I mean, and the people realized it too. So they say, okay, you're gonna protect us from your people coming in. It's your people. You know what I mean? You bringing them in. Just don't let them run wild, man. Have some kind of, where you can control them as far as they dealing with us. But like I said, the United States government failed on that pitifully. And that's why Martin King was going up to Washington, because he was talking about, they were, relative to, they were supposed to put in a protection for us. That's why even when we were doing back in the day, before the civil rights, we were doing freedom rights, being that we were free to walk the land and stuff. And the federal government was supposed to protect us from the local state government, the local Klan groups, whatever it was. And that's why everything was going up in marches and stuff, attempting to get the attention of the federal government. That's why people were going on those television shows, interviews, whatever they could, to bring it up to the attention of the federals, and making sure they know that the people are dependent on the federal government, not the local government. However, there are situations in the local government, the state of Florida, where I was, born in that state they call Florida. There's a lot of laws. There were anyway a lot of laws on their books which gave us ways to circumvent a lot of mess if we would study what they wrote down, and say, okay, this is what deals our parents, maybe from a perspective of, okay, these are the deals that our people made with them. Now let's see what we can use these deals to do for ourselves, instead of these are laws that the cracker made, and from that point of view, but make it be like, this is what our ancestors made deals, even though they made the treaty and it was from a conquered people point of view, maybe they still made the deal, and there's still some value in it. We should look for that value, and we could use it because our ancestors left us gems around. We just have to be faithful enough to find them gems and use them.
But
like you're doing.
I wanted to speak to your point too, brother. It made me think about, like, in aspects of power and warfare, why would your so-called oppressor, offer you these handouts or whatever you want, or treaties or whatever? I think it will be an aspect to deter you from self-determination. Like, he won't want you to become self-determined, so I will offer you these type of handouts, because if you become self-determined and your future generations become self-determined, that's a threat to me. If I'm in power.
I agree. And the next thing too, we have to recognize this thing. I watched a movie called Shaka Zulu, and Shaka was telling the colonial people when they came in. He said, "Yeah, I'll give you some space, but y'all gonna keep coming, and after a while, y'all gonna try to outnumber us. And then what we gonna be is gonna be your land, then, huh?" That was the last statement in the movie or something toward that thing. You know what I mean? But that's what they do. They went into Palestine. Yeah, we just want a little place to hang out, and they took over. They went into Australia. Yeah, we just want a little place to hang out, and they just murdered the people. They did that here. Yeah, we just want a little place. We're watching it in our own lifetime where they're doing the same thing to others that they did to us. And then they're going to settle. Huh?
No, I would say they doing it under law.
Well, they making it up. That's why he had said the difference between legal and lawful. I mean, he said he'd get into that another time. But that's interesting because they're not really lawful. They're legal because they're making the stuff up, because legal is man-made crap. But they're not lawful at all. None of this is lawful. Like he said, all of the stuff they call in law and rights and all that stuff and sovereignty, they got it all from the Crown of England. It was granted to them by the Crown of England. Who are they? Where they get the power to be granting our land away before they even stepped on it? That's what the man said. Before they even stepped on the land, they had parceled it out, like they did with the continent of Africa in Germany. They went over there, had a meeting, and parceled it out, and then went over there and started murdering the people like they lost their mind. You know, like that's how they do. That's their MO, and we're watching it. And right now, they're killing the indigenous of Palestine like they lost their mind, taking it over. And then I heard them today say they want that waterfront that the Gaza is on. So they got to get them out of that waterfront. That's prime real estate property. They got plans for that. They want to build, hotels and shit over there. So they gonna bomb them till they move. Just like they bomb niggas on Miami Beach till they moved, and out of California till they move, and anywhere else they want till they, like the man say, whenever they get ready, they just obliterate that title garbage that they gave somebody whenever they want to, at their discretion, without discussion and without explanation. Isn't that right, Epic Studies?
That is 100% correct. And this, like you said, this is their MO. This is what they do. Like you said, it's like they come to the round table. Well, it's not like it's what they do. They come to their little round table, they make their plans, and they execute those plans via their speaking mainly for over here in North America, doctrine of discoveries and all these other
don't miss eminent domain. Don't miss that eminent domain, because they had calmed down for a couple of years. Then they say, wait a minute, eminent domain.
Mm-hmm.
Let's play that game. That's from sea to shining sea.
Right, yes. You took the words right out of my mouth, brother. From sea to shining sea.
And if you break it down at its root, all it is self-determination. They determine, like they may use the Bible or whatever laws they use in the back, they self-determination up, but it's just at its roots, just self-determination, which is a God-given right to every man.
Agreed. And this is what I've been trying to, for the most part, express on other panels and stuff like that, how important the concept behind what you were just speaking about always win, about self-determination. Like at the root of that's not granted to you by anybody else. That's something you determine within self. You see what I'm saying? And I think okay, go ahead, Brother Wale.
No, I'm saying yes.
Okay. And that's something that's determined within self. So with our people saying that, we should come together, do our own thing, this, that, and the third, but in that same sentence, you're saying you're still talking about operating and being as such within said jurisdiction. Well, that kind of mess up the whole concept behind self-determination, because you're still seeking relevancy and to be recognized and approved by some government. Doesn't matter which one it is or any one it is. That's a problem, because you obviously don't know yourself. to be able to make that determination. And in law, you're deemed incompetent and a ward via that incompetency. I don't know if I'm losing.
Okay. My thought is that what you're describing is assumed authority, where you just assume authority. That's what they did. They assumed authority, and then they behaved under that assumption. And what it seems to me you're saying is, without us assuming authority and then behaving under that assumption, all is lost.
Exactly. That's the first step we need. That self-determination.
Right. And that and again, that need not be granted by anybody. We don't have to wait for approval or recognition from anybody.
Exactly.
Matter of fact, that would deflate your power to wait on somebody or ask anybody. All of that that's just deflating your own power.
But at the same time, I did want to propose, like, I know we need the self-determination, but thinking about it in a war aspect, like, okay, they got like so much advantage as far as like we operate, like the whole world operating under these type of systems that they got. They done infested the world with the system, so you gotta know how to play their game a little. Like you're saying, we gotta know these laws, know how to know their systems. So we gonna have to do commerce with them on some level. You know, like if we getting legislation, certain things like the treaties that they had. I know it was like a sellout thing, but like we're gonna have to operate with them on some type of level, but we could still be self-determined in that same thing.
Agree. I see what you're saying, brother, and I agree. It's just my thing is, if we're going to be able to do that, you know what I'm saying, outside of said jurisdiction, we can still do that. If we're lacking certain economic structures or industrial structures to do business with said government, then what we need to get to work to establish those things. You see what I'm saying? And then when we do business with the United States, that there doesn't have to be enmity there. You see what I'm saying? That doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be, warlike interactions and stuff. It doesn't have to be that way. If we set ourselves up honorably and do honorable business, I can see that actually panning out in a good way. You see what I'm saying? But if you come into it with like a militant mindset, thinking that automatically the United States is your enemy and this, that, and the third, then then you can expect some pushback. You can expect some fighting. You can expect this, that, and the third. You see what I'm saying? I say this: let's reestablish ourselves to the point to where we want to be, and then when we get ready to do business, we say any government, any corporation whatsoever, we'll be in a position to not do so, but protect our means as well. But we can do that on our own.
Go on.
I yield.
I'm agreeing with you, and I'm saying the main thing is we have to agree to come together and trust one another enough to formulate a unity, even if it's a unity of 3 people, 300, 3 million, whatever it is. That's how unities are formed. Somebody comes together, whatever the purpose is, it don't really matter. It could be to play football or to roll a joint. It could be for any reason. But when we come together and we know we can trust one another and we form that unity, we can roll all them joints. You know what I mean? Or we could play all them football games. But we have to come together to do that. And as long as we fighting, like you say, not only with the so-called adversary, and that's what one of the brothers and I were talking about. We have been convinced that we have enemies. I'm not so convinced of that anymore. I have realized that even though they used to tell me when I was a youth that my biggest enemy is myself, and I didn't understand that. And at some point, I got the revelation or epiphany. And I said, damn, if they would have just explained it to me, I could have got this when I was 19 or something. You know what I mean? When they first started hearing people telling me that. But now I understand it. But it's based on culture. And it's based on something else you said, which is integrity. And as long as you maintain your integrity, you have almost no enemy, because you're whole. You have to open a hole, or you have to give that away. Your wholeness, your solidness. You have to doubt yourself. Some kind of way you have to do something to hurt yourself. You either doubt yourself, be scared, or whatever you want to. It is, you break your mojo. But can nobody break your mojo when you're strong? Like you said, you in the jail, and you say, you're gonna be in there, you losing things, you know that, but you're not gonna break your mojo, right? So that's kind of what I'm saying. As long as you stay firm and committed, nothing can break you.
Indeed.
So
That's what I was alluding to when I was talking about my experience when I got, like I said, when I sat in jail for 3 weeks, you know what I'm saying, for something I literally did not do. I had nothing to do with. But like I said, I was under the same influence to, sign this or do certain things in order to get out faster. You know what I'm saying? But for me, I chose to hang it out. Not only that, I would be honest as well. I was financially in a place to where I was able to sit in jail for that time as well. You see what I'm saying? So I can honestly say that that may have been a possibility had I not been in, that type of financial situation at that time to be able to handle that. You know what I mean? That I may have wavered on my position. I can say anything's possible, but reflecting back on that experience and what I felt, even going through that, I still don't think I still don't think anything, even lack of finances, would have prevented me from standing on the principle the way that I did, because I can say that confidently now, because after receiving the judgment from that case when I went to court, that made it that much more sweeter. The victory was that much more sweeter. And I was that much more glad that I did stand on principle and stand where I stood, because had I not, I wouldn't have received that judgment of all charges dropped and the case dismissed. I would have never heard that had I, taken a different route. And matter of fact, had I taken it, I would still be in jail on something right now, on that same something I didn't do or had anything to do with. You see what I'm saying? And that taught me the importance of standing on the principle, even in the face of adversity, the most extreme adverse effects. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I said it took me back biblically to where it says, and I believe that was Revelation, where it says only the crown of life will be given to him that endures until the end. For me, I applied the exercise of principle to that. The exercising of the principle for me is standing on the truth, unwavering, no matter the influence, no matter the obstacle. I think that's what that speaks to. And that's the point I was making as far as that. And that is very important, because like you said, Brother Wale, that's truth, and that truth builds trust. When you got that kind of truth, the principle thereof flowing from your lips and emanating from your being, people will trust you, and it develops for you a reputation that can't be broken, because you stand on the truth. If you get where I'm going, Wale, I hope I ain't go off too far. But
yeah, you have to break it yourself.
Yeah. I had to, that's what I mean. I went through that process of, and it did, man. It showed me a lot. And that's why even to this day, people may have, their displacement with religion and this, that, and the third. I was brought up in the church and this, that, and the third. And yes, we know about, how, offsetting that is, when it comes to religion. But I won't speak against it and I won't knock it, because there are things that I learned in that discipline that I will never abandon. You see what I'm saying? The good that I did get from it, I won't abandon those principles just because, you know, even if for the most part, even if it is for the most part untrue, which I don't believe, you know what I'm saying? I believe for the most part, those principles, the truth of those principles can't be spoken or acted out, or even written down, unless they're possessed, you know, the person who's writing them down or acting them out possesses that principle. So I don't, people saying that they, you know, they don't believe this, that, and the third, especially when it comes to biblical principles. I'm not one to take that position because of, like I said, the good things that I did take and I have learned from it. I can't just throw that stuff away, because of those principles today help make me the man that I am today and think the way that I do. Respectfully. And I yield. You brother still there?
Yeah, that's real right there. Now, definitely had to phone in. Though,
Okay. All right.
To speak my piece with you. But yeah, it's just a stance we got to take. Like, my whole campaign is to get us, everybody that with the same thoughts, to ride under that one flag. So, you know, we can operate and learn, you know, how we going to have a strategy to operate with these jurisdictions that we are aware of. You know, so that's the main goal, like, for me, as far as trying to figure out how that's going to look a strategic way.
Study. We got to start there first, brother. We got to start with fervent and diligent study. That's the part that most of us tend to, you know, ignore. I'm just being real, because I mean, I went through this process too, bro. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
First coming into the information and this, that, and the third, I'm studying. Then, you know, of course, just like anything that you do, it can become tiresome. You know what I'm saying? You might even lose interest, you know what I mean, here and there. And then you just kind of pick and choose, cherry pick this, that, and the third. But that's not going to get us, you know, as a whole anywhere. What we have to do is fervently study. And we can't any longer ignore that. We have to study to show ourselves approved before we take any action. The problem is with us, we've been trying to take action before we fully comprehend things. You know what I mean? And it has gotten so bad with that, it has gotten some of us killed. You know what I mean? E.g., for example, you know, the exercising of certain rights out on the road and stuff like that. And people who don't fully comprehend that go out there and try to exercise, and they either get themselves hurt, locked up, or even killed, you know, unfortunately. You know what I mean? So I think that's where it would start ultimately for us, is that study, and we do so well. That's why I have that under my name, Epic Study Well. That's sort of like that's a prerequisite, you know, to any action that you take, is that you study and you do so well. Because once you do, man, hey, bro, once you get ready to take that action, oh my God, you doing so not only competently, always winning, Brother Wale, but you doing so confidently.
Yeah.
Ain't no ignorance there to create that fear. You see what I mean?
Because your opposition gonna test it.
Yeah, it's gonna test. It's good. Yes, sir. You will be tested on what you claim or what you think that you know. You will be tested, and that's your opportunity to show yourself approved.
That's right.
Not argue and try to run away and change the subject and move the goalpost. That's your opportunity to show yourself approved. I yield. My bad, Brother Wale.
No, I mean, I agree with you. I just study different. I study our people and our laws and our culture. I see what they do, and I look upon them as that, what they do. And then I have to keep my focus on what I am doing. Because if I'm doing something, when I'm doing something, but I'm busy watching a guy in his yard or whatever he's doing, I'm going to screw myself up because I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing. I'm paying attention to what he's doing. And for me, I can only look over there at a glance, and then I got to get right back to what I'm doing. So I personally don't spend a lot of time studying their thing, because I won't be studying my thing. And that's part of leaving my thing to die, by not paying attention to my own business. And that's what I would suggest. Even though I understand this stuff here, when I look at it, all I'm looking for is his position, not anything else. I want to know his position. Oh, he's positioned himself there. Oh, he's positioned. He's assuming authority based upon the crown of England, and they are assuming authority based upon the Vatican, and they are assuming authority based upon their interpretation of a book, and they're assuming authority. You get what I'm saying? So that's their position. I don't really need them to be studying every word they say when I know where they are located. Nah, that's how I see it. I need to know what I'm doing more than what they're doing, right? And then I study what my ancestors said, what my ancestors did, what my ancestors are doing, because they're busy now. This whole thing is part of the ancestral move for us to remember what we are, so more than who we are. Because why? We are not a monolith. Everybody's not going to get on the page with always win. He said we want to get everybody. That's not going to happen. Never did. It was over 500 tribes in America only on that Algonquin, whatever confederation. That was just in the confederation. What about the tribes that weren't in the confederation? But in the confederation, there was 500 tribes. That everybody ain't the same. We don't all sing in the same key. We not all born on the same date. Everybody ain't gonna never be always the same. We find our comrade, our familiars. We find our familiars. I'd rather use that terminology. And then we work with our familiars. People that are familiar with us, we recognize. Oh, I recognize you, man. How you doing? And we ain't never met before. I do that all the time. I've been around the world, and that happens. People say, "Hey, man, how you doing?" And we've never met before. We sit down and we burst it like we've been buddies for a long time, and do things if we got things to do. So I call that your familiars. You know what I mean? People you vibe with. So that's how we have to see ourselves and work within that framework, and we can get a lot done. Because now we're not arguing, we just finding our familiars and working with them. And if he want to be a Moor, there ain't no problem. He could do the Moor thing with the other Moor guys. They did. That's what but they like to say, we all Moors. No, we not all Moors, man. We not all, Irish, and we not all Africans. They know all. We not none of that. My birth certificate reads colored. And I know people take all these certain classifications like we're being given some stuff, but sometimes we determine what we do. Just sometimes. Give us just that. Oh, our ancestors couldn't do nothing, and so the crackers made them do all that. And sometimes they did stuff because that's what they wanted to do. Just sometimes. I'm just saying. We need to give them that space so we can give ourselves that space.
Indeed. I feel that, Brother Wale. I feel that. Hey, I heard you mention earlier about legal and lawful, and I did say we could do it another time, but I do have it up here on the screen. If you brothers, we can go over it right quick. The legal definition of lawful and the legal definition of legal. But I have it up right here on the screen. I think it's two pictures, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's two pictures. One is legal and the other one is lawful. And
I see one. I was going. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. And this is according to, I believe this is Henry Campbell Black. Yeah, Henry Campbell Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. These definitions come that I have posted right here. And lawful, it reads legal, warranted or authorized by the law, having the qualifications prescribed by law, not contrary to nor forbidden by law. And that is case law for that is Ohio Automatic Sprinkler Company versus Fender. McDonald versus Mernon Shipbuilding Corporation. And the highlighted portion reads, let me go up a little bit more. The principal distinction, there go that word principle. The principal distinction between the terms lawful and legal is that the former, being lawful, contemplates the substance of law. The latter, the form of law. The latter being legal. The form of law. To say of an act that is lawful implies that it is authorized, sanctioned, or at any rate not forbidden by law. To say it is legal implies that it is done or performed in accordance with forms and usages of law or in a technical manner, which means, for example, it may be lawful for you to kill somebody defending yourself, right? But I do know in certain states, I would say Tennessee for one, they have a charge for it. It's called justifiable homicide. In Tennessee, based on a few people I came in contact with who unfortunately took somebody else's life in defense of their own, but they were still locked up on the charge of justifiable homicide, and they were being prosecuted for it. So that's legal. You see what I'm saying? That's what legal is, the technical shit. You know what I'm saying? But you simply defending yourself against harm and against from somebody, someone or something taking your life, that's law. You know, like within our culture, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, that's law.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying? This legal nonsense is no matter what anybody does to you, if you take their life, you're facing a murder charge. Though the law says murder is the shedding of innocent blood. Legally, it don't matter if the blood is innocent or not. You can't shed it without legal preface, technically. You know what I'm saying? I think that's what I got from that.
Yeah.
But continuing on, in this sense, quote, illegal, end quote, approaches the meaning of, quote, invalid, end quote. I'll read that again. In this sense, illegal approaches the meaning of invalid. For example, a contract or will executed without the required formalities might be said to be invalid or illegal, but cannot be described as unlawful. Further, the word lawful more clearly implies an ethical content than does legal. That's true too. Law speaks to the principle, the ethics. Legal, it don't matter the ethics. If it's permissible legally, you can do it, you know, technically. The latter, being legal, goes no farther than to denote compliance with positive, technical, or formal rules, while the former, lawful, usually imports a moral substance or ethical permissibility. A further distinction is that the word legal is used as the synonym of constructive, which lawful is not. Thus, legal fraud, what quote, legal fraud, end quote, is fraud implied or inferred by law or made out by construction. Lawful fraud would be the contradiction of terms. Again, legal is used as the antithesis of equitable. That's what that would you'd have to click on that to blow it up. But we'll go to legal right quick and read that because I think I only have one piece of a highlighted portion for that one. Yeah, legal. Okay. Conforming to the law, according to law, required or permitted by law, not forbidden or discountenanced by law, good and effectual in law, proper or sufficient to be recognized by law, cognizable in the courts, competent or adequate to fulfill the requirements of the law. Cognizable in the courts of law as distinguished from courts of equity, construed or governed by the law, by the rules and principles of law, in contradistinction to rules of equity. Posited by the courts as the inference or imputation of the law as a matter of construction rather than establishment by actual proof. Legal malice. And there's
What is
more of
that rules of equity? What is that rules of equity? Let's look at that next after this.
Rules of equity? Okay. All right. Give me 1 second. I'll read the rest of this and we can go to it. Posited by the courts as the inference or imputation of the law as a matter of construction rather than establishment by actual proof, legal malice. Created by law, DeVita versus Piana Nisani, lawful or pertaining to law, Kinsley versus Herald and Globe Association, etc. All right, you said you wanted me to look up rules of equity.
Yes, because they say it's in contradistinction to rules of equity. We are always accustomed to rules and principles of law and talking about it, but it's in contradistinction to rules of equity. So maybe we should know what rules of its opposite is. So we might fall into rules of equity and find some remedy in there.
Indeed. All right, give me 1 second. I got this pulled up over because when I type in rules of equity, maxims of equity come up. So give me 1 second. I'm going to share this tab so we can see. All right. Can you guys see that? It says rules of equity in the search bar, maxims of equity. Okay. All right. Let me scroll down because I want to find. I don't use Wikipedia, so don't mind me with that. The 20 maxims of equity, veillaw.com. Let me see if I can find like. Okay, here we go. Cornell is a good one. Cornell is a good one. So I'll tap on that one and see what we get. All right, equity. Can you brother see that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. In law, the term equity. Okay, this is dealing with the term itself, equity. The term equity refers to a particular set of remedies and associated procedures involved in civil law. These equitable doctrines and procedures are distinguished from legal ones. I see. Shout out to Wale, man. I see Wale. While legal remedies typically involve monetary damages, equitable relief typically refers to injunctions, specific performance, or vacatur. A court will usually award equitable remedies when a legal remedy is insufficient or inadequate. For example, courts will generally award equitable relief for a claim which involves a particular or unique piece of real estate, or if the plaintiff requests specific performance. Origin. The distinction arose in England where there were separate courts of law and courts of equity. Following this pattern in America, some states created chancery courts, which deal only with equitable relief. Which deal only with equitable relief. In other states, the courts of common law were empowered to exercise equity jurisdiction. That sounds right. Yeah, that sounds right. Today, separate courts of chancery have largely been abolished. How unfortunate. As the same court that may fashion a legal remedy has the power to prescribe an equitable one. And that's according to law.cornell.edu. If you want anybody looking at this, wish to read further on, there's the link. you may do so. I want to go back and read the where it says maxims of equity. I want to go back and read that. But that was a key bit of information there as far as the definition of equity. Okay, Oxford let's use Oxford reference and see what they say. Maxims of equity.
I like how equity is different from equality.
Indeed. My godfather, it's funny that you mentioned that. My godfather, he told me that as well. He mentioned the distinction between those two. He said, I'm not for equality, I'm for equity. I said, I feel that.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
here are
agree.
maxims of equity. I'm just gonna read what's up under the paragraph, and we're gonna get straight to the meat. Equity acts in personam, as in personam jurisdiction. Equity acts on the conscience. Equity aids the vigilant. Equity will not suffer a wrong without a remedy. Equity, i.e., which means, that is to say, equity will not allow a person whom it considers as having good claim to be denied the right to sue. But legally, you can be denied that. I'm just saying. Equity follows the law, i.e., meaning, that is to say, equity follows the rules of common law unless there's a good reason to the contrary. Equity looks at the intent, not at the form. And I love that about equity. I love that about the law. Equity, i.e., that is to say, equity looks to the reality of what was intended rather than the way in which it is expressed. Where the equities are equal, the earlier in time prevails. That is to say, where rights are equal in worth or value, the earlier right created takes precedence over the latter. He who seeks equity must do equity. He who comes to equity must come with clean hands. And I think this is why a bunch of your politicians and people in power, especially in government, don't like equity. They don't wish to exercise. They always go to the legal performance of the 14th Amendment and operate from their jurisdiction and from their premise. That's not equity. But equality is equity. Equity looks on that as done which ought to be done. Equity inputs an intent to fulfill an obligation. Equity will not assist a volunteer. And though that's maxims of equity according to oxfordreference.com. If you brothers have anything you want to build on or say to the contrary, I'm open ears. We can talk about it.
No, just that last one was curious. Equity will not do something with a volunteer. I thought that was interesting.
Hold on, I'll go back to it. Equity will not assist a volunteer.
Yeah, I wonder how that is understood. How is that to be understood?
Voluntary settlement. I'm thinking, okay, I'm thinking it's speaking to, and we can look it up too, but just on face, I'm thinking it speaks to something pertaining to something that's voluntary or something like that.
Yeah, like the plea deal. I get you.
Yeah, if you voluntarily make a move, yeah, equity won't be there to like assist or save you, so to speak, if you make the wrong move or wrong decision. In other words, equity leaves the space for you to be held accountable for whatever action that you do choose to take.
Right.
That's what I got. That's what I'm getting from it.
Mm-hmm.
And rightfully so. Rightfully so.
Oh,
You
yeah.
should be, held accountable for, what it is that you choose to do. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I'm with it.
And I think that's why also equity is important too, because it brings about the responsibility of making sure that you're not ignorant and not making moves from the perspective of ignorance, because equity is not going to assist you once you voluntarily go that route, or any route really. You know what I'm saying? Which it speaks to the fact that you need to be competent. You need to be competent. Well, y'all don't let me ramble on.
I
Y'all,
mean, it looks like to me that what I'm saying in here is okay. Like when I was younger, like whatever,
okay.
19, I realized that all crackers knew their heritage. I would ask little 3-year-old crackers their heritage, and they would know. Well, my father's Irish, but my mother's, and I'd be like, damn, they know. 3 years, I got down to 3-year-old crackers. And my mother's German, but she's only German on my father's side and they go and I'd be like, damn, where they get all of that before they're 5 years old. They have a base of reference, which is the reason I brought that up, a base of reference. And their base of reference is always ancestral.
Why you think?
Because that's where bases of reference come from, your ancestors. And because we are neglecting that area, those areas, because it's more than one area of cultural advancement for our children, cultural inculcation for our children. We're giving them religion. We're not giving them culture. And that's what I'm noticing. So once you have culture, your own culture, you're equitied up. From that point, you're supposed to, like a lot of stuff that they say here about clean hands or speak the truth. You get all that when you get cultured up, how to act and behave, because the Germans going to tell you right away. I mean, not the Germans, but some of them people over there would tell you right away, you good with your family. But once it step outside of your family, you cut a sucker's throat. But we don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
We're not cultured up like that. We good with each other, but when somebody else come in the room, we gotta watch them. We don't do that. We watching each other all the time. So I'm just saying, but once we're cultured up, we as children, instead of being educated, instead of being indoctrinated in religion, we should be, we could be on equitable footing with everyone in the world by being cultural first. Because the Chinese and Japanese, they do culture first. The Arabs and the Greeks, they do culture first. Everybody does. The Germans, the Portuguese, the Spanish, everybody.
It establishes self-determination.
Right. We got to establish our own, and each people have to do it, because I don't see 30 million people just coming around tomorrow doing something. But in a general form, if we all just stick with some form of, even I talk to people about this speaking the truth thing, and they be Christians, they be in the Bible and stuff. I say, well, what about the 10 Commandments? Don't they use it in there? Yeah, but see, they figured out a way how to get around that too. I'd be like, damn, how you get around all your own stuff? If you're a Christian or whatever, I'm okay with that. But it's also in there that says speak the truth. How you get around? Well, see, that was the old rules. We under Jesus now, so we don't have to follow the law. I'm like, what?
Broke it down. Lawful and legal. That's the legal aspect of it. They took the law of the Bible and then created their own legal stuff.
Talk about Jesus something. Well, anyway, I just see that our people, because that's the only ones I'm concerned with, is our people, have all kind of ways to circumvent speaking the truth. And without speaking the truth, there's no accumulation of power. You tell me, Wale, I'm going to pick you up at 10 o'clock. And I don't trust you to pick me up at 10 o'clock because you don't usually tell me the truth. I'm not gonna be waiting on no 10 o'clock for you to come pick me up. I'd be like, oh,
example
but
too,
then,
bro, of how to look.
Yeah.
I want to give you an example of how that equity would look. For example, something that I was thinking in my mind when we was speaking about equity. Okay, I would want to bring a complaint, a federal complaint up against Walter Plecker and his misclassification of my ancestors. So I would bring that up in a court, and then they would probably in an equity court or whatever on an equity basis and get them to right those wrongs. You know, like the misclass. So they would have to go back in the records and be like, acknowledge, okay, we did this wrong, that was wrong, and the systems he was using was unethical. So we had to give these people equity. So they would have to redo their legal things. They would have to probably change some legal things like, damn, okay, we got to we got to change some stuff. So that's what I was thinking about with equity. Like, it's specific things that happen in history on a legal basis that may contradict law and contradict other things, what they doing currently. So they would have to be held accountable for that on an equity on an equity law standard.
Indeed, I agree. I agree. Well, and not to mention or forget as well, these maxims are there. They're there for the record. They're there for us to exercise as well. The problem is we haven't been doing so. You see what I'm saying? And that's what we have to get back to. This wonderful bill, man. I'm glad we got to this point to be able to even go look that up and to see that. You know what I'm saying? And come to this conclusion. That was epic, man. That was epic. And I appreciate that, Brother Wale, for you bringing that up for us to even go forward to go look that up. We needed that. That brought it home. It was like a piece of the puzzle that was missing. And it brought some things home, even in my mind, just going to look that up. You know what I'm saying? So shout out to you, Brother Wale. I appreciate that, man. Appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to many more bills like this with you brothers, man. I really like this bill. I really do. I appreciate y'all coming up too to kick it with me, man, and build with me.
You got a minute. I was gonna say that this is bringing back memories because as I was saying, my mother and my grandmother were telling me this information at different times, but the last one speaking was my mother, and she said that that there are certain benefits that we are not claiming, that we have not only a right but some kind of record for to say that it is ours. And the thing, like you're saying, we're just not claiming a lot of stuff. We are allowing assumed authority to put us into a thought of inferiority. So when we come up to people, like you said, we argue and fight. You know, I don't argue and fight with children. I really don't argue and fight with nobody, but I especially don't argue and fight with people because I know I can win. So I did. What am I arguing for? All I have to do is do what I'm doing. And they say, "Oh, don't do that." I turn around and look at them and keep going. You understand what I'm saying? But when people assume the authority and we assume the inferiority, they say, "Don't do that," and we say, "Why not?" You know, we give them the authority. Now we're not just moving with the same amount of assumed authority of our purpose. I'm saying, not the same amount, but of our purpose. We lose our assumed authority and we start doubting ourselves, and we turn around and say, "Why not? Why I can't do it?" And at that moment, we just gave them great power over us. And that's what I'm saying a lot, that we are not assuming. We have to wake up in the morning and be like when you're in the mirror, beefing yourself up with platitudes and affirmations and stuff. Beef yourself up with that assumption of authority. I'm in charge of the day. I'm in charge of what goes on in my life today or something. Take that authority. and make inculcated. And people will recognize it after a while. They'd be like, "Oh, you can't tell that dude that." And you say, "How you know?" It's just a look. It's a way you carry yourself. Once you have that kind of energy in you, like I know for sure, like a lot of people won't try to bully me. They bully other people around, but they don't try me because I got a different look about it. I didn't been through that fire, so I know I have a different look about it. People tell me, "Oh yeah, they know not to mess with you." I be like, "Why? I ain't did nothing." But it's something you carry once you have made certain determinations, and that's what I wanted to say about the children. Once they know some kind of cultural inculcation, rather than religious and academic, talking about education and religion, but we replace our culture with religion almost entirely. And it's not as useful. It's not as useful to our purposes because we have to refer back to everything instead of referring back to ourselves.
Indeed, and I think it has kept us. The pseudo religion has made us stagnant, and it stripped us. It has stripped us of our ability to act appropriately and to be held accountable for too. Because even from the perspective of, you know what I'm saying. Let's use Christianity as an example, right? They say, in order to be forgiven of your sins and this, that, and the third, you just bring you cast all your cares and your worries and your sins at the throne or at the feet of Jesus. But for me, I think that's unrealistic. And I'm going to tell you why. Because people who do that, who take all their cares and worries and problems, right, and they so-called lay them at the feet or the throne of Jesus or God or whoever, right? And they do that, right? But when they wake up the next day, their problems are still in the same spot they left at their doorstep. And their inability to recognize those problems from that point forward, the point where they left them at the throne of God or the throne of Jesus or whatever like that, from that point forward, it's like they lose all accountability to be held accountable. They lose all perception of what it means to be able to correct yourself. It has handicapped our way of thinking because even if we do something wrong, we could just be like, well, the attitude is I just ask God for forgiveness, or I could just lay this at the feet of God or the feet of Jesus and just go on about my daily life, not worrying about what the fuck I just did, what that was especially wrong. And then guess what? There's a karmic debt for that as well. And that's what I mean by what pseudo religion has done to our mental. Because when it comes time to be held accountable, or when it's time to look in that mirror, proverbially, we lack that ability to do so. So change can take place. But again, in order for that change to take place, truth has to make herself at home in our minds, and we must allow her to do so. Our hearts must not be hardened towards that. So moving forward, man, we got a lot of work to do with that. We really do. And that's one of the biggest obstacles our people face when it comes to making the necessary and appropriate changes going forward. We keep looking at, these pseudo-religious concepts that we were taught that prevents us from thinking in the direction of, holding ourselves accountable and becoming a stronger people. Because I remember, I remember growing up and stuff, Brother Wale and Brother, who's that? And Brother Always Win. I remember growing up and seeing this out of our people. Like what you were saying, Wale, I still remember seeing that growing up. Like our people, man, we used to have each other's backs, man. You fuck with one brother, you fuck with a lot of us. Niggas finna come from, man, you could be in a grocery store. I've seen this happen. Let a brother get into it with a white boy or something in a grocery store. Every nigga that you can, man, every nigga in the vicinity that can hear and see it, gonna have that brother's back. Don't let it be a sister.
Yeah.
You really in some trouble, my guy. You might fuck around and lose your life today messing with our sisters.
And I know you were speaking to integrity earlier.
Yeah.
That's what we missing. Like, I try my best to exercise my integrity, and that's been like a tool for me. And another thing, like unconditional love, like just loving them, a person regardless, and that way you gonna learn from them, even if it's somebody like you were saying, the integrity. A man with integrity have no enemies, like that go with that, because like you ain't gonna have one, because you able to unconditionally love, you know, everything around you, and like operate, you know, like that.
Indeed. Well,
That's beautiful.
I'll go ahead, Brother Wale.
Oh, I say that's beautiful, man. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you both. Thank you, whoever.
Indeed. Well, it's been 3 hours, brothers. I'm gonna let y'all close out, man. I'm gonna go ahead and play a few tracks before we get off of here. So if you guys have anything you want to say before we end this segment, you're free to do so. I'll mute up until you finish.
Oh, make something every day. Make something.